Marijuana stocks have been extremely volatile even before Canada legalized cannabis in 2018. So, how should investors manage this risk and approach the market today? We have Dan Ahrens with us to shed some light and provide some insights. Dan is managing director and CEO of AdvisorShares. He's also the portfolio manager for a number of ETFs, including Pure Cannabis ETF, ticker YOLO or YOLO, and Pure US Cannabis ETF, ticker MSOS or MSOS. So, what are the advantages of ETFs, especially when investing in cannabis?
Well, I'm always a proponent of a managed portfolio, of a diversified portfolio. And everything that we do here at AdvisorShares is called an actively managed ETF. That's compared to an index-based ETF. And we've found, and we've proven very well, that in areas like cannabis, a new, very volatile, quickly changing area, we can add expertise. We have a track record of outperforming what an index is. An index is just it's no one's managing it. It's a blind index of usually ranked on market cap. And especially when you look at Canadian cannabis stocks, sometimes the very largest ones might be among the very worst financially and performance-wise. Again, we've already had a track record of adding alpha, adding performance better than an index because cannabis is such a specialty area. Beating an index is pretty hard to do in a large cap growth fund. Now, the other thing about a fund like ours is, we're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. It's a very mixed bag in cannabis for investor access. What that means is there's a lot of investors that simply don't have the ability to invest in a plant-touching, OTC-traded cannabis stock in the United States, which may be the best place to invest. And those stocks are available at some brokerage firms, not available at others. Whereas our ETF, it's generally available.
Do you feel SAFE will pass before Senator Schumer's pet bill? And how do you feel about any cannabis legislation passing before midterms?
I'm looking forward to the midterms coming around, and it's going to put pressure once again on politicians to act. And, we're going to have, some competition from different sides of the aisle. And there's such wide public support for marijuana reform. I like to talk about reform rather than legalization because that's the true terms. Now, we're talking about federal reform that was promised in campaigns over a year ago, even in Joe Biden's own campaign. So a lot of people expected reforms such as SAFE to happen in the last calendar year. It didn't. The ball was in the Democrats' court, and they failed to get anything meaningful done when it comes to cannabis or marijuana. And now we have a lot of support coming from the Republican side as well. So with all that said, I'm not really answering your question because I don't like to talk about politics. I've gotten really tired of talking about politics and trying to figure out when and if politicians are going to stop playing their politicians' games and actually get something done. But because this has been built up for so long, there's so much momentum. I'm really confident we're going to see things pass in this calendar year because it's already past due. But politicians are going to negotiate. There's a lot of competing bills. Those bills are going to get negotiated. They're going to get sliced and diced and put back together. And I think that federal reform is going to come piecemeal in a number of steps, and some form of safe banking is usually thought to be that first step.
And looking at the legal landscape, is there an advantage in the legal landscape to owning non-plant touching businesses versus growers?
A lot of debate about that. And that's a great question. Now, in our funds that we manage here at AdvisorShares, such as YOLO and MSOS, we have the word pure cannabis in the fund name. And what that means is I don't think Constellation Brands, the alcohol company, is a cannabis stock, even though they've invested in canopy growth. I don't think Scotts Miracle-Gro is a cannabis stock. They have an ever increasing, cannabis business in their Hawthorne division, but they still are primarily a lawn care and fertilizer company. It's not the main part of their business. So I like to keep things pure. The next step is, are there a bunch of ancillary companies that you can invest in? Yes, we've been successful in our funds investing in some cannabis focused REITs, real estate investment trusts, that have done very well in the past couple of years. There's companies like Grow Generation, Hydra Farm. These are ancillary companies, but cannabis is their primary business. But if we're looking at evaluations from today, and I can't hide from the fact that cannabis stocks have been on a 11 or 12-month losing streak. They've been beaten down dramatically. So from today's value, I think the best places to invest are in plant-touching companies. Very importantly, on the US side of the border, investors need to understand the big difference between Canadian cannabis companies and US cannabis companies. They can't cross the border. And while we do have a handful of ancillary companies in our fund, there's good reasons to own them, such as liquidity and a little additional stability. I think the upward opportunities and the truly undervalued stocks are in plant-touching multi-state operators in the US.
So is US legalization the only way out for Canadian LPs?
It's interesting when you hear the Canadian LP CEOs speak, when you hear their earnings announcements, they are laser focused on getting into the United States. It's practically all they talk about. And there's only really a handful of good Canadian operators or LPs that have access, true inroads to the United States. The biggest ones are Canopy and Tilray. I don't like the multiples they're really trading at. I don't like their losses in sales revenue and market share. Yeah, they want into the United States really badly, and they've been making investments into non-THC companies in the United States, and they've been making option deals where they have access to the United States with legalization. Village Farms is an excellent company in Canada that has greenhouses all over North America, even in Texas, where I'm based. They don't grow THC marijuana in those greenhouses, but they grow hemp. And, they came about being experts in greenhouse growing of tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and everything else. They're experts at it. They have great inroads to the United States. So yes, to answer your question, the US is extremely important to those Canadian companies. And I still have serious doubts about their ability to get into the United States and act profitably in the United States. They don't have any licenses. They don't have any operations. They're far behind the ball, but they might be able to do some partnerships and acquisitions. We'll see. The real opportunities in the US side of the border.
So what part of the market do you like best right now? Plant touching, pharmaceutical, CBD?
CBD is largely ignored and almost looked down upon by cannabis investors. I like some of the CBD companies for the fact that they can already market nationwide. They're in retail stores nationwide. They have some operations and infrastructure. I think they're going to be real nice acquisition targets. Now, that's a small sideline. The real opportunity and where I like to invest is in plant touching companies on the US side of the border. They're known as MSOs or multi-state operators. And, they are getting more and more focused on branding, on consumer packaged goods. They're looking towards the future of what the cannabis landscape is going to look like in the United States. But they're growing a lot of revenue and their stock prices have been beaten down. So these plant touching US operators, they're very often growing the plant, packaging the plant, selling the plant in their own dispensaries. I think that's where the real opportunity is.